Hello, all and sundry. Welcome to the Court of the EDI Jester. Ooh. I've got a historic piece here that is absolutely fascinating. So we're going to take a look at it. Subscribe, share, please share. That's the most important thing. Share it on Twitter, share it on YouTube, share it in your groups. Come and be a warrior teacher, buy me a coffee. Super thanks, usual, right? There is one of the most reliable researchers in the business is someone called Still Tish, right? On Twitter, @StillTish. Okay, some of you will already know Tish. This is a piece from December 2022, and it talks about something very important, because what I think needs to come to the fore is the psychological impact of these trans-identified males' behaviour on the wives. And this article faces that down, and I think you'll find it interesting. So we'll do an excerpt, and then you can go and read on Tish's excellent website, which is a mountain of resources. Examples of what's been going on in all sorts of arenas. So very wide gaze from Tish. So please do go and look at Tish's Substack and also support her if you can. She is probably the greatest researcher in the field from my perspective. Also one of the first person I ever talked to when this all started for me. And it's called the Gendies Conference in 1998. So we're going back in time. We're doing a Marty McFly. And in doing so, becoming a Marty McFly in the ointment of the gender movement. You have to laugh. This was a conference set up by the Beaumont Society, which began as a support group for men who cross-dress for erotic purposes, and eventually set up a sister organisation called the Beaumont Trust to support the wives of these men. This is an article presented at the conference in 1998. And it was called The Psychological Effect on Wives and Partners of Transsexuals by Diana Aitchison. Right. Diana opens by recognising the gains made by the transgender individuals in the last 3 decades of the 20th century, but laments the lack of recognition of issues affecting those women who were damaged by their association with the cross-dressing men. Though Diana refers to them as afflicted by gender dysphoria, Diana is keen to assure her audience that she is not intending to censure the men in the community. So there's a sort of capture going on here of this woman in terms of writing this article. So she's not criticising the cross-dressing Larping men. We're saying here that we're apt to dismiss the experience of the women caught up in these marriages who find they do not meet the same compassion their transgender partner expects for himself. The impact on the wives resulted in some 100 cases, a need for psychiatric care. Right? This is the antithesis to the crap from Hayden the other day in the Daily Mail, right? In which he tries to justify his LARPing behaviour as if it is something that he's had since childhood, which he hasn't. He's retroconning his own history there. Hundreds of children stick on their mother's shoes or their sister's bloody skirt, especially the boys, and fart around and fanny about. Hundreds of them, right? It's got nothing to do with the fact that you're now a paraphiliac fetishist in your 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever you are. So this is the antithesis, isn't it? This is the opposite side. The trans widows, as they're called, right? There are 100 of them had to have psychiatric treatment because of the behaviour of these narcissistic men in their marriages. It's the antithesis of Hayden's ridiculous narrative that tries to make him connected to young boys that might or might not play around with clothes, and then to connect him also with young people who have taken on this fetishistic cult in their mind and are confused, just distressed. So you've got just kids playing is the first end, then you've got the distressed kids who've been introduced to this concept by nefarious players, and then you've got the likes of Hayden who dress up and play knicker fumbling and all that nonsense when they're in their 40s. So he's trying to retcon his history. Not happening. Not one LARPing man. 100%, right. In some 100 cases, a need for psychiatric care was required. That's an estimated 5% of those who contacted the Beaumont Trust. 5% of the women. Likely to be the tip of the iceberg, as any woman who knew the origins of the Beaumont Trust would be unlikely to seek their support. To give Diana credit, she doesn't fail these women and presents 2 horrific case studies to the Gendies conference. How I would love to know the response from the men present. Aitchison lays out the background. The wives become some sort of muse for their husbands. His intense interest in her stems not from love or from desire, but a kind of identity plagiarism or identity theft. You've seen it before. We've seen the pictures. They become their wives. That becomes their model for what they think is the woman inside them. This fetishistic paraphilic play. She has plenty of experience of the wives' experiences, having taken calls from over 2,000 women over 10 years. So 5% of 2,000 is 200. No, it is 100, isn't it? That's the way the 100 psychiatric care comes from. The wives who contact her are overwhelmingly shocked. Many she described as frightened. Some of their husbands, once discovered, declare their intention to have surgery on their genitals. For anyone who wants a detour to explore one of the stories here, there is a book, but it's called Cross-Dressing with Dignity. I mean, just get lost. We can thank trans widows' voices for challenging the dominant image of the gender dysphoric subject. Far from being prey to a debilitating condition, many appear largely to be in the grip of porn-fueled obsession. Make no bones about it, that retconning article in the Daily Mail by Hayton is an attempt to justify his behaviour. It is not a lived experience that has truth to it. It is not something that enables us to accept the idea of a trans or paraphilic child. The child who plays with the toys at 3, the child who is confused at 14, has nothing, zero, to do with a paraphilic and fetishistic man that Hayden became, and who now expects pupils in his class to call him her. So, far from being prey to a debilitating condition, many appear largely to be in the grip of a porn-fueled obsession. Their partner's exes are the collateral damage. So why are these wives so defeated and traumatised? Because this sounds like living with your stalker but with no escape. These men are practising a sort of vampirism of the soul. Aitchison describes the mimicry as the commonest complaint from wives. It's clearly not an aberrant minority. Sooner or later, we are going to get our head around the fact that every single one of these men, every single one of them, does not deserve affirmation, compliance, or anything else that goes with the fact that they think what they can never be in any form is a woman. I do not want paraphilic and fetishistic men in the office carrying out their fetish without the permission of those around them. It's a sexual fetish. It is not a sexual orientation of any kind. There is no connection between a child playing dress up, a confused teenager who is in distress, and the likes of Hayton or Went, or for that matter, Jenner or Monroe, or any of the parade of Larping men who simply need to sit down if they finally realised that what they've been doing is utterly wrong, and that now they think they can ingratiate themselves with those of us that have been fighting against the very ideology which they represent every time they turn up in their costume. Go read it. Go read it. The Beaumont Society, to some of this, is ground zero. Go read it. Tish is the best. Okay? Come be a warrior teacher. I'm fed of asking you. I'll see you later. Ta-da!